Kevin Lee is back and he's fighting a guy that has way too much hype for no reason other than the fact that he's fighting Kevin Lee and he has the OV at the end of his name. And I want to give my predictions for a lot of the other fights on the Strickland and Magomedov card. That's right, Guram Kutateladze is back as well. And on top of that, we have plenty of solid prospects to discuss as well. And if there was ever a card that you guys should watch for that very reason, because we're going to be looking at a lot of guys this weekend that will be stars in the future, it's this card. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let me give my predictions for these fights. The first fight that we are going to get to, guys, Kevin Lee and his return against Rinat Fakhretdinov. Ooh, Rinat Fakhretdinov. Oh, wow. So scary. He might be the most overhyped guy in UFC history in the span of 2 days, just because it's fight week, Kevin Lee's back, and the only reason as to why Rinat has any hype right now is because Kevin Lee signed to fight him. He is so fucking underwhelming when I watch his fights. No ability to find a finish. The most boring fighter in the UFC is not an understatement when I actually say that. And the reason why I'm a little bit pressed right now is because it's just the perfect example of this dude getting a fuckload of hype because he's a grappler, he's got a beard, and his last name ends in OV. But as far as I'm concerned, none of it is warranted. And it's because of Kevin Lee mostly. Kevin Lee, yes, he just went to a decision with Diego Sanchez. And yes, he's been out of the UFC for a while. But I just don't think you're really getting up for a fight with Diego Sanchez. This is a guy that, because his last name ends in Ov, at least you're going to get up, to fight this guy. And you're actually going to try. But as far as I'm concerned, Rinat Fakhretdinov has only out-grappled Brian Battle, that's right, the tough winner from a few years ago with Striker, and Andreas Michailidis, who's the guy that got flying knee KO'd by Alex Pereira. But when I've seen this guy's fights back, and he only has a couple of them in the UFC, he's won every round, he's got a good gas tank, but he does absolutely nothing at all. He takes people down, and he just does everything in his power to secure them on the ground. When I say the wet blanket thing, I hate that term, by the way. I can't stand when people call someone a wet blanket because it's usually not true. But in this case, he is probably the most boring motherfucker that I've ever watched. And I think Kevin Lee is going to knock him out. I don't think Kevin Lee is Brian Battle or Andreas Michailidis, a guy that just doesn't have solid athleticism and wrestling combined. And Kevin Lee not only has good athleticism, not only is he strong and stocky, yes, his gas tank is suspicious, but he's got pretty solid wrestling, and I think it'll hold up early. And as far as I've seen, Rinat Fakhretdinov doesn't have anything going for him on the feet. And I just don't understand it. Why the fuck is this guy getting so much hype? I see in the comment sections, left and right, terrible fight for Kevin Lee. He's going to get smoked. Like, this guy's not smoking anyone. He's holding on for dear life to get himself a decision. And I mean that. I'm really not sitting here and exaggerating right now. Go watch his fights. They're insufferable. He does nothing with his takedowns at all. And all of a sudden, because it's fight week, he's got a big following, and now people think he's the next Habib and Khamzat Chimaev. No. I think Kevin Lee is going to stuff the early takedowns, and he's going to knock this dude out. Kevin Lee's been training with Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is one of the best grapplers on earth. Kevin Lee has a lot of experience in big fights. He's fought a guy like Charles Oliveira. He's been in an interim title fight with Tony Ferguson. He's had a lot of losses that he's been able to learn from. Now, this Rinat guy has an impressive record, but it's like, who the hell is he beating? And how are you beating them? You're not dangerous. You're not finishing anyone. And Kevin Lee, say what you want, he at least has the ability to finish people, and his grappling is at least something that can hold up early. And I think he's just a different man. You see his his newfound lifestyle where he's now, I think he converted to Islam, and he seems like a different kind of person, much more mature. And I think he's getting up for this fight. Whereas maybe he had a little bit of mercy when fighting old man Diego Sanchez. And yes, that was a pathetic performance because he couldn't finish Diego Sanchez. But I'm telling you guys right now, Rinat, he's getting too much hype. And you're buying into it. And yes, this is a risky pick because if Kevin Lee doesn't finish this guy in the first round, I think that Rinat is probably going to get the job done. So don't take this as I'm confident in Kevin Lee. Don't take this as I don't think Rinat has a good style to win fights in the UFC. No, he's good enough to be in the UFC. I just don't think he's going to get this one. I think he's going to get knocked out. And if he does win, I won't be surprised. But one thing I know is that it will not be entertaining. And that's not why I'm picking against him. I promise you guys. I actually think Kevin Lee is going to stuff the takedowns and knock this dude out. I really do. I think he's going to come in there with a chip on his shoulder. So I'm going to go with Kevin Lee, as risky as that may sound. Damir Ismagulov, Grant Dawson. Now, I will say this. You look at Grant Dawson's record, you're probably going to be a little bit more impressed than you will be when you actually watch his fights. His record looks really good. He's coming off of a couple of good wins. He's coming off of a finish over Mark Madsen. That's right, the guy that went to the Olympics in Greco-Roman wrestling. He's coming off of a finish over Jared Gordon, who is pretty solid on the feet as far as I'm concerned. Grant Dawson's not dangerous on the feet. I'll just cut to the point. He's not very good on the feet. And his grappling, he's like the perfect example of a guy that just works hard, just really grinds for everything in the octagon. Whereas he doesn't really have a shitload of talent. He's a pretty good grappler, don't get me wrong. He's talented when it comes to his jiu-jitsu, but everything that it takes to set up that jiu-jitsu to actually get where he wants to be is not that amazing. He just works really hard to get there. And that's what I like about Grant Dawson. He will outwork his opponents. He has a great gas tank. He's very gritty. He's tough. And he commits to his game plan to a T. Grant Dawson's never going to be going out there and trying to stand with anyone. No, he's going to try to take them down even if they have a good background in grappling. And that's why he's always getting these late finishes, because he just grinds on people. He outworks them. He spams takedowns. He commits to all of these takedowns. And he's so good at taking people's backs. He's so solid at sinking in the hooks. Like, I watched his fight with Jared Gordon back, and it was a tough-fought fight for both guys. And I know that's not necessarily a great sign if you're going in there to fight a guy as skilled and as well-rounded as Damir Ismagulov, but you know, he basically got like this last second submission, whereas Jared Gordon, 30 seconds before getting subbed and getting his neck taken, was actually in a dominant position. And, you know, he's thinking to himself, oh, I'm about to ride out the round. We'll go to the scorecards. Grant Dawson has this like really excellent scramble. He sinks in the hooks and just takes his neck in the span of 2 seconds, basically, and submits him. So this guy is always grinding to get to where he wants to be, which is to submit a guy. And I think that is going to be perfect against Damir Ismagulov. Now, Damir Ismagulov has good takedown defense, right? Statistically, but who's really tried to take him down? The last guy that really committed to taking him down got him down and had like 10 plus minutes of control time and took his back. And I'm talking about Arman Tsarukyan. Now, Grant Dawson's not Arman Tsarukyan, but as far as getting submissions, he's better than Arman Tsarukyan. And if he takes Damir Ismagulov's back, I think he's better in that position than Arman. Now, Arman is the better overall grappler. He's got the better overall wrestling. He doesn't have to work as hard for the takedowns, but at least he's committing to them when he fights Damir Ismagulov. And I just don't think Damir Ismagulov's takedown defense is as special as some people are going to think, because I think that Grant Dawson will be able to take him down. And I don't think he's going to submit Damir, but I think he's going to win a decision by racking up control time. Damir Ismagulov, when you are putting this guy on the back foot, when you're making it clear that you're trying to take him down, it kind of flusters him a little bit, and it doesn't allow him to set his strikes up on the feet. And what he likes to do is he likes to box at range. He likes to chuck out the jab. He likes to, you know, try to hit you with a good combination to the body every now and then. He doesn't have a lot of power in his hands. He has pillow hands. He looked pretty decent against Guram Kutateladze, and that's the reason why people hype him up big time, because he's well-rounded and he stuffed a couple of takedowns against Guram, but Guram wasn't committing to any of these takedowns at all. In fact, the takedowns were very lackluster, and I'll get to Guram a little bit later. But I think that Grant Dawson's going to take this guy down a few times, rack up control time, and get the win. And Damir Ismagulov is going to land some good shots on the feet. He's going to get the better of the striking exchanges, but they're going to be very few and far in between. And Damir Ismagulov, as I've said, isn't very dangerous. His takedown defense is solid. I think he'll be able to get up to his feet a couple of times, but he will get taken down eventually. I think that Grant Dawson's tough enough to take little, pillow pitter-pat shots from Damir. And that's really the only thing he does all that well, Damir, is he's got a good jab and he's got some decent boxing. And he's fast and he's a guy that can fight at range. But that's kind of it. His kicks are all right. But I think he gets too much hype because, again, that OV at the end of his name. And the same thing with Guram Kutateladze. This is my theory, guys. Whenever two people from Eastern Europe that are well-rounded, now don't get me wrong, he's well-rounded, he's a good fighter. Whenever they fight each other, two Eastern European guys with OVs at the end of their name, if they go to a decision and they both look well-rounded, people will start calling them like the next big thing, King Kong in the division. And I think that they get too much hype for that. And yes, Damir Ismagulov could definitely win this, but he's not going to finish Grant Dawson on the feet, I don't think. And it's a close fight. It's a very close fight. I just think that Grant Dawson's going to be able to pressure him, take him down, rack up the control time. It's not going to be that entertaining as far as I'm concerned, but we are about to find out how good Guram Kutateladze really is. On to the next one. Guram Kutateladze and Elves Brenner. Elves Brenner's coming off of a win over Zubaida Tukhugov, of course, one of Khabib's guys, who's not that amazing, but at least it shows that Elves Brenner is good enough to beat someone that is not like a top 5 worst guy in the division. He's actually pretty decent. He has a lot of good experience on the amateur scene, but as far as I'm concerned, Guram Kutateladze's overrated as fuck. He's a bit of a fraud. Once again, he had a close fight with Damir Ismagulov. He had a close fight with Mateusz Gamrot, who he beat. But I think Mateusz Gamrot got the first round and got the third round, should have beat Guram. Guram Kutateladze is arguably 0-2 in the UFC, and the reason why he gets so much hype is because, number one, he's friends with Khamzat Chimaev, and number two, he's had close fights with these other Eastern European guys. Yes, he's very skilled. Yes, Guram Kutateladze is extremely well-rounded. He has amazing takedown defense, good submission defense. He's very fast. He can mix it up on the feet. He's amazing in the clinch. This is what I'm going to say to compliment him. People don't give Guram Kutateladze enough credit about his clinch game. He's got brilliant elbows and good knees on the inside in the clinch. Of course, his body kicks are wicked. His leg kicks are solid, but he has pillow hands and he doesn't have the ability to finish people off. And this is the issue with a guy like Guram. I know people mention him as if he's the next, number one contender in a couple of fights. That's not going to happen. Not only because he's always injured, but because you need to be able to finish people in the lightweight division to get that far. And I feel like a lot of guys are pretty well-rounded at the top. And Guram Kutateladze is a well-rounded fighter. And he's fast. And he can be flashy. But I feel like sometimes this guy tries to be too flashy. Now, I mentioned he tried to shoot takedowns on Damir, but he didn't commit to them. He shot them in a very sloppy way. I feel like he tries to be flashy by being extremely well-rounded. Like, he'll try to clinch. He'll try to shoot takedowns. He'll do everything. And it looks great on the outside. It looks like, wow, this is so high level. But I feel like he's not really that amazing at imposing his will. I feel like you need to have a fucking plan when you go out there. And I don't see that from Guram. I don't see that. That's the issue. I just talked about Grant Dawson and how good Grant Dawson is at imposing his will and getting the fight where he needs it to be. I understand Guram Kutateladze would love to knock someone out, and he'd love to find a submission. He'd love to take someone down. But he just chucks out random techniques, and I feel like there's no method to the madness. It's just random technique after a naked takedown, a flashy switch kick to the body, a spinning heel kick. He's well-rounded, but it almost hurts him. I can see through all the bullshit, and fans can't. They look at Guram Kutateladze stuffing a takedown, and they're like, holy shit, this guy's the next King Kong in the division, bro. He's not. Like Damir Ismagulov in the second round of his fight with Guram Kutateladze at one point had completely nullified him for the entirety of the second round just by keeping him at the end of his jab. Damir had stuffed a couple of takedowns and was like, this dude's not committing to these takedowns. He's kind of just chucking them out there, and I can just slide out of the way of these kicks. That's all this guy's doing. He's just chucking a kick every now and then, and that's it. And Guram Kutateladze, when he would actually commit to something, he would look good. Like, for example, the clinch. Guram Kutateladze is really solid in the clinch. He's got really good elbows, and he's got good knees. And then he actually, at one point, had Damir Ismagulov a little bit hurt. So if he can hurt you, it's probably going to be with one of those elbows, one of those knees in the clinch. But, other than that, when this guy's just striking, as I've said, it's just, there's no plan. I don't know, man. I just am not that impressed with him. I feel like he looks good, but it's not going to work. You know what I mean? It's not going to work. Some of you guys are probably just scratching your head right now saying what the fuck are you saying, Lucas? You're just talking a whole load of shit. I'm not talking a whole load of shit. I really mean it, bro. This guy's got some nasty kicks. He can mix it up, but he's not a good finisher. That's what it is. And I think that he's not going to finish Elves Brenner. Guram's like a -700 favorite to win this fight. And I think he's going to get it done by decision. I think he's going to win every single round. But I don't think he's going to beat the brakes off of Elves. I think Elves is going to be able to read Guram by halfway through the second round, and he's going to start to be able to do his own thing. And I think Guram Kutateladze is going to be throwing a spinning back kick, and then he's going to throw a leg kick, and then he's going to throw a wicked body kick, and then he's going to, shoot a half-ass takedown just to show everyone how well-rounded he is. And by the end of it all, he'll just go to another decision. This is the thing. That style can only go so far. Once you get to the top of the division, people are going to see through all the bullshit, Guram. People are going to see through your little flashy switch kicks into your little jab. Like, he's good. He's really good in the clinch. He can hurt people there. That's the one place where he can hurt people with a nice elbow on the inside. But he had a beautiful scramble with Mateusz Gamrot in their second round as well. Mateusz took him down. Guram got Mateusz in a leg lock and used that to get up to his feet. But again, he's very good defensively. He's got wicked takedown defense. 30-27, that's my prediction. On to the next one. Benoit St-Denis versus Ismael Bonfim. I think this is going to be the fight of the night. If Ismael Bonfim, who a lot of people are hyping up to oblivion because he's got a good win over Terrence McKinney and he's got a brother in the UFC that's also really good, and they both did really solid work on the regional scene or whatnot. Listen, Bonfim has a fuckload of power, but so does Benoit St-Denis, and I don't know how good Bonfim's chin is. He is extremely composed. He's very high level. He's very well-rounded. He's a smart fighter. He completely shut down and nullified Terrence McKinney, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But Benoit St-Denis, even though his defense is absolutely trash and he does not move his head at all, he just straight up walks into punches, he gets away with it because he has a granite chin. And if he does not get KO'd by Ismael Bonfim, he's either going to finish Bonfim or by the end of this fight, we're going to be saying this is the toughest guy in the UFC. Holy shit, this is the next Marvin Vettori of the lightweight division. And unlike Marvin Vettori, he actually has a ton of power in his hands and can finish people. He just dropped his last opponent in France 3 times and just butchered him as soon as the second round started. He's got 2 wins in the UFC, both finishes. He's got really solid grappling. He's got a black belt in judo. And in his fight with Nicholas Stolze, he took this guy down and just basically binded his legs together and just beat him up on the ground and then worked his way up into a submission. And even before he worked his way into a submission, this guy was taking flush flying knees and really solid right hands to the chin. And the same thing in his last fight in France against Gabriel Miranda. He was taking massive shots. And I was just shocked at how this guy was not falling. So I don't know if Ismael Bonfim is going to knock this dude out. I don't know. He has a ton of power in his hands. He's the smarter fighter. He's composed. He completely schooled Terrence McKinney and shut him down. Now, he didn't just pulverize him for the whole fight, but he basically just trapped Terrence McKinney up against the cage and didn't allow him to exit off the side and basically held him exactly where he wanted him and just teed off on him every now and then with big body shots and big hooks. And that's what Ismael Bonfim does. He doesn't have it's not a high volume guy, but when he lands, the guy can put people out, and he's very powerful, and people think twice once they get hit by him of, holy shit, I don't want to get stung by this guy again. He looks a little bit stiff when he throws his punches, to be fair, but when he connects, dude, he has a ton of power, and he's got a good ground game. He has good takedown defense as well. He was able to stuff takedowns from Terrence McKinney, another, pretty strong, explosive guy. So I think that Ismael Bonfim is probably going to go out there. Now, I say that this Benoit guy has a granite chin. Again, I'm judging it off of 3 fights. And I'm judging it off of, guys that don't have Ismael Bonfim kind of power in their hands. But, man, I actually think he's going to win this fight by decision. I think that Benoit St-Denis has got a good enough chin to be able to survive. And he has a shitload of power in his hands as well. And if he tags Ismael Bonfim, he could rock him too. And that's kind of his whole style. He's just a marauder. He goes out there, he tries to finish you. He goes buck wild. He has one of the most entertaining styles in the UFC, in my opinion. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to mix it up and take Ismael down. I don't think that's going to go so well for him, even though he is a black belt in judo. I think we're going to see a stand-up battle for the most part. And I think it's going to be a scrap. So I'm going to go with Ismael Bonfim by decision. Max Griffen and Michael Morales. Max Griffen, 37 years old, UFC veteran. I rewatched his fight with Magny. Very close fight. I thought that he may have been able to win that. He dropped Magny in the first round. He does have some power in his hands. He's been able to knock an old man out like Song Kanong But as far as I'm concerned, man, the people that Max Griffen beats aren't very good. And Michael Morales, even though he's young, he's green, he's only 24, and he hasn't looked like unstoppable early on in his career, even though he's got a couple of good wins and he's got a wicked finish over Trevin Giles and a good finish over Adam Fuckett as well. I still think Michael Morales is going to be able to get the job done. He's a specimen. He's only 24 years old, but he's a freak physically. He's got really long arms. He has like a 79-inch reach, which is crazy. That's almost Neil Magny level for the welterweight division. He's a little bit taller than Max Griffen, and you look at the age gap, I actually like that for a guy like Michael Morales because I think that Max Griffen is kind of nearing the end of his career, and he kind of reminds me of like the tubby man Marcin Tybura of the welterweight division. Just kind of one of these guys at the apex just popped out, just your typical run-of-the-mill fighter that, just has to kind of be there, but doesn't really do anything all that well. Of course, he's got a couple of knockouts here. He's got a couple of decisions here. He's lost this fight. He's lost that fight. He's not that great. Michael Morales has a lot of potential and just has a shitload of power. And I think what we're going to see is Max Griffen try to chew this guy's legs up early, like Trevin Giles did. And Trevin Giles dropped Michael Morales in that fight as well. And then Michael Morales just caught him with a good shot towards the end of the first round, and Trevin was never able to recover. And I think he's going to catch Max Griffen, who hasn't been finished by TKO since Colby Covington. And I think that was on the Conor and Diaz card, so he's not got a bad chin. But I think Michael Morales is going to tag him and put him away. So I'm going to go with Michael Morales by a second round KO. Sean Strickland and Abus Magomedov. Guys, I just think Abus needs a finish early on if he's going to beat Sean Strickland because experience matters, man. And Sean Strickland has fought the who's who of this division outside of course, the champion and Robert Whittaker. He's fought Pereira. He's fought Jared Cannonier. He's fought Hermanson. He's fought Uriah Hall. He's fought Christoph Jocko. He's fought Brendan Allen. He's got his losses to guys like Kamaru Usman, which made him up his ante when it comes to the wrestling. And he's got really good, solid takedown defense. And usually we say, like, this guy's got great takedown defense, but I mean it. Like, Sean Strickland has stuffed takedowns from a lot of solid guys that are good grapplers in the middleweight division. And Abus Magomedov can have that OV at the end of his name, and he can have 1 million wins for all I care about. Who has he beat that matters? And when's the last time he's got himself an impressive win? Dustin Stoltzfus, we're going back to last year, and before that we're going 2 years back, and before that we're going 500 years back. This guy barely fights. And I understand he's got a similar record to Strickland, but it's just very padded, and it's over old men that don't really mean anything. And I think that this guy is going to gun for the finish. He's going to miss these crazy head kicks, and he's going to miss these big winging hooks, and he's going to fail to submit Sean Strickland early. And Sean Strickland is just going to end up getting in this guy's face, popping the jab, and being much harder to hit than Abus Magomedov anticipated. It's easy to look at Sean Strickland tape and then to say, oh, this guy's not good. He leaves his chin up in the air. Well, then how the hell hasn't anyone finished him other than, of course, Alex Pereira? Jared Cannonier couldn't finish him. I know a lot of people were saying Jared Cannonier got so much better when he fought Marvin Vettori. Maybe he improved a tiny bit, but it's also just that Sean Strickland's pretty damn good, and he's hard to hit, and that Jared Cannonier is never going to go out there and knock Sean Strickland out or land 500 strikes on him. And Abus Magomedov, I need to look at a win that's impressive before I actually pick him to beat someone like Sean Strickland. And I'm just, if you're picking this guy, you're grasping at straws. You're thinking, this guy looks really good. He looks really wild, but that flashy shit don't work. Imavov was that flashy light on the feet guy that's well-rounded, that has the OV at the end of his name, that was supposed to beat Sean Strickland, who had taken that fight on a bit of a short notice. And look how it worked for him. Imavov looked amazing in his last fight against Chris Curtis, who I picked to beat Imavov. Imavov is pretty damn solid. He's actually decent. And Strickland just shut him down. And, of course, Strickland took some damage, but he really wasn't getting hit early on. That's the thing about Sean Strickland. He started taking larger amounts of damage from Imavov in the later half of the fight, but by then he was already in his groove. He was outlanding Imavov, and he had gotten the sting off of Imavov's shots. And I think that Abus will be landing decent shots in the third, fourth, and fifth. It's just that he'll be tired, and they will be few and far in between, and he'll be frustrated, and it'll be a typical, Sean Strickland fraud check, as you see up there, where we think this guy is that amazing, and he's really not. And he's flashy, but I don't think that's enough. You can't just be flashy. There are a lot of flashy guys that are never going to make the rankings. There are a lot of flashy guys that are never going to make the UFC. And Magomedov is obviously good enough to be in the UFC, and I think that he'll be good enough to eventually, put himself in the rankings, but it's not with this fight. It's a big jump in competition. This is the best guy he's ever fought. And I don't think he's prepared for it. Sean Strickland has had so many big moments. He's fought Alex Pereira. He's fought in main events time and time again against Uriah Hall, against Jack Hermanson, against Jared Cannonier. And of course, he's lost a couple of these fights, but the only one that he's looked terrible in is the Pereira fight. And other than that, you're going to have to go way back in the day against a guy like Kamaru Usman. We talk about the wrestling. Abus is not going to go out there and manhandle him. Someone commented that on my video the other day. Abus is going to manhandle him. Like, who's he manhandled? Oh, you're going to give me a name. You're going to have to look at his record to remind yourself of the guy that doesn't even fight anymore that's retired because he's 45. Great. And Sean Strickland's beat Brendan Allen. And Sean Strickland's beat Krzysztof Jotko, who are better than anyone Abus Magomedov's ever gotten past, as far as I'm concerned. Brendan Allen looks like Israel Adesanya compared to Dustin Stoltzfus. Like, oh, man, dude. Of course you're going to finish Dustin Stoltzfus. Strickland would finish him too. It's just that he wouldn't finish him with a flashy up kick. Front kick. He would finish him in the first or second round with his boxing. And that's the thing. Abus Magomedov has these like really dynamic finishes, but they're over guys that are going to get finished by anyone that's a top 10 guy in the UFC. Abus ain't ready. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.
What's up, guys? It's Lucas Tracy MMA, and I'm wondering if you're trying to look like Yoel Romero. Well, if you don't have his genetics, that's impossible, but I could at least help you get halfway there with my ultimate lifting program, and if you're a beginner, my novice lifting program. These are programs that I've used my 9 years of experience in the gym to make so that you can put on as much muscle as possible in as little amount of time as possible. And it'll also give you a variety of workouts so that you never get tired of the gym. So if you're interested, click the link in my description. And for a discount, use code MMA for 30% off.